Welcome back, folks, to our channel, where you go before you travel. Now, I know what you're thinking. Finally, a YouTube listicle promising danger and excitement. It's about time. And to that I say, hold your horses, cowboy. This isn't just any ordinary list. This isn't some adventure tourism ad or a Bear Grylls fever dream. No, this is something far more intense. We're talking about places where danger is a daily reality, not a weekend excursion. These are places where survival is a constant challenge. Think of this as the opposite of those top 10 places to retire articles, which frankly are starting to feel like they're written by AI bots who've never actually met a retiree. Those articles are a dime a dozen. This, my friends, is the real deal. We're diving deep into the heart of danger. We're talking about countries grappling with conflict, instability, and humanitarian crises so severe, they make your average airport security line look like a picnic in the park. Imagine the most stressful situation you've been in, and multiply it by 10. Over the next few chapters, we'll journey across the globe, shining a light on these often overlooked corners of the world. We'll explore the stories that don't always make the headlines. We'll unpack the complex issues at play, from civil wars and political turmoil to natural disasters that have reshaped entire regions. And of course, the ever-present threat of, well, let's just say some places have more interesting wildlife than others. These creatures are not just fascinating, but also a part of the danger. So buckle up, grab your metaphorical flak jackets, and prepare to be informed, maybe a little depressed, but hopefully motivated to understand the very real challenges facing these nations and the people who call them home. Let's get into it. This journey is not just about witnessing danger, but about understanding resilience and the human spirit. Afghanistan, a nation with a history richer than a fruitcake and unfortunately about as easy to digest. For centuries, Afghanistan has been a crossroads of empires, a strategic chessboard for global powers, and let's be honest, a bit of a geopolitical football. From the days of Alexander the Great, right up to the ill-fated Soviet invasion, everyone, it seems, has had a go at trying to tame this rugged, mountainous land. And spoiler alert, it hasn't gone well. This long and tumultuous history has left its mark, leaving the country with a legacy of conflict, instability, and enough weapons to arm a small moon. But let's not pretend this is ancient history. The recent withdrawal of US forces and the subsequent return of the Taliban have plunged Afghanistan back into chaos. The human cost of this turmoil is immeasurable, with millions displaced and living in fear. And before you go thinking, well, that's Afghanistan for you, it's crucial to remember that behind these headlines are real people, families, communities, trying to survive amidst the wreckage of perpetual conflict. Now, let's shift our focus to a country that's been dubbed the world's worst humanitarian crisis. A title so bleak it makes most depressing IKEA showroom sound like a compliment. That's right, we're talking about Yemen, a nation locked in a brutal civil war that's become a tragic case study in international apathy. Imagine a country teetering on the brink of famine where millions are on the verge of starvation, clean water is a luxury, and hospitals are overflowing with the wounded. Now picture this humanitarian catastrophe unfolding largely out of sight, overshadowed by other global crises and, let's be honest, a healthy dose of media fatigue. That's the grim reality in Yemen, a nation ravaged by a multi-sided civil war that's become a proxy battleground for regional powers. On one side, you have the Houthi rebels, backed by Iran, and on the other, the internationally recognized government, supported by a Saudi-led coalition. And if that sounds complicated, well, that's because it is. It's a tangled web of alliances, betrayals, and power struggles that have left the Yemeni people caught in the crossfire, their lives shattered by a conflict they didn't ask for and can't seem to escape. Right, Syria. You know, a country's got problems when it's easier to list the things that actively on fire than the things that are. And by things, I mean hopes, dreams, and basic infrastructure. It all kicked off in 2011, part of that charming Arab Spring movement that swept the region. Except in Syria, spring never really sprung. Instead, they got a decade-long inferno of, well, everything awful. We're talking a civil war so messy it'd make your average Thanksgiving dinner look like a UN peace summit. You've got Assad clinging to power like a cat on a screen door. You've got rebel groups, some dodgier than a kebab vendor outside a nightclub at 3 a.m. And then, because no one likes a two-way fight, in waltzes the international community, lobbing bombs and stirring the pot like it's a particularly volatile risotto. The result? Let's just say Syria's tourism brochures aren't exactly flying off the shelves these days. South Sudan, folks, the world's youngest country having gained independence in 2011. You'd think they'd be in their honeymoon period, still riding that wave of newfound freedom. Instead, they dove headfirst into a dumpster fire of their own making. Imagine the worst breakup you've ever seen. Now add AK-47s, ethnic tensions simmering hotter than a Vindaloo curry, and a political elite more interested in lining their pockets than governing. That's South Sudan in a nutshell. After years of fighting for independence from Sudan, you'd think they'd have learned the whole war is a bad thing. But apparently old habits die hard, especially when there's oil involved. Because nothing says stable nation building like a resource curse that pits everyone against each other. It's like they won the lottery and immediately used the winnings to buy matching hand grenades. The Democratic Republic of Congo, a country so rich in resources it makes Saudi Arabia look like a penny-pinching accountant. We're talking diamonds, gold, coltan, you name it, the DRC's got it. You know what else it's got? A seemingly never-ending cycle of violence and exploitation. It's a tale as old as time itself. European colonialism waltzes in, wreaks havoc, and leaves a power vacuum so large it could suck up a small moon. Enter Mobutu Sese Seko, a dictator so corrupt he'd make Imelda Marcos blush. He plundered the country for decades, leaving a legacy of instability and poverty that's harder to shake than a glitter bomb at a rave. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, the wars started. We're talking multiple conflicts, a revolving door of armed groups, and a level of human suffering that would make even the most hardened cynic weep into their morning coffee. Right, Russia. You know, the land of Dostoevsky, borscht, and, well, let's just say questionable political situations that would make even a seasoned diplomat sweat profusely. And it's not just the vodka talking. Russia has a bit of a history with, shall we say, robust leadership. From the czars who really enjoyed their absolute power, to the Soviets who, let's be honest, weren't exactly known for their chill vibes. It's like someone looked at a history textbook and said, "Hold my vodka, I'm gonna make this entire country a case study in political turbulence. And don't even get me started on the current political climate. It's colder than a Siberian winter in there. Freedom of speech? You can try, but it might come with a free one-way ticket to Siberia. Political opposition? Well, let's just say it's about as effective as a chocolate fireguard. It's enough to make you want to reach for a bottle of vodka yourself, and let's be honest, we all know that's a slippery slope." Ukraine, a country known for its beautiful sunflower fields, vibrant culture, and, oh right, the small matter of being invaded by its much larger, more volatile neighbor. It's a bit like finding out your friendly neighbor has been secretly building a tank in his garage and has decided to test it out on your living room wall. Since 2014, Ukraine has been grappling with a conflict that began with the annexation of Crimea, a move that had the international community clutching their pearls and muttering about international law. And then, well, things escalated in a way that can only be described as decidedly not chill. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine is a stark reminder that peace is a fragile thing, kind of like a Fabergé egg, balanced on a unicycle on a tightrope. Cities have been reduced to rubble, millions of people have been displaced, and the human cost is immeasurable. It's a humanitarian crisis that has sent shockwaves around the world and a stark illustration of the devastating impact of conflict. Somalia, a nation synonymous with breathtaking coastlines, a rich cultural tapestry, and unfortunately decades of seemingly relentless turmoil. It's a country where the phrase failed state is thrown around with unsettling regularity. For years, Somalia has been grappling with a trifecta of instability, political turmoil, economic hardship, and the ever-present threat of terrorism. It's like someone threw a Molotov cocktail into a dumpster fire that was already blazing merrily away. The result? A nation teetering on the brink, struggling to provide basic security and stability for its people. The absence of a strong, centralized government has created a vacuum, and like nature, vacuums abhor a vacuum, especially when that vacuum is in a strategically important part of the world. Instead, Somalia has become a patchwork of territories controlled by a dizzying array of factions, militias, and clan-based groups, all vying for power and influence. It's enough to make your head spin faster than a whirling dervish on a sugar rush. Right, Central African Republic, you don't often see this one topping the tourism charts, do you? It's a place that rarely makes it to the bucket lists of avid travelers or adventure seekers. And by topping the tourism charts, I mean appearing on any list that isn't about deeply troubling things. The country is often overshadowed by its more stable neighbors when it comes to tourism. This is a country that's unfortunately become synonymous with instability. The images that come to mind are often those of conflict and chaos rather than serene landscapes or cultural heritage. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, it's essentially been on a rotating carousel of coups, rebellions, and uprisings. The political landscape has been anything but stable, with power frequently changing hands through violent means. Think of it like a really depressing game of musical chairs, but instead of losing a seat, you lose basic human rights. The constant turmoil has led to widespread human rights abuses and a lack of basic freedoms for the populace. The Central African Republic is tragically rich in resources, but its people rarely see the benefits. We're talking diamonds, gold, uranium, and other valuable minerals that could potentially transform the nation's economy. Timber, you name it, they've probably got it. The country's natural wealth is staggering, yet it remains untapped for the benefit of its citizens. And yet, they're one of the poorest countries on Earth. The wealth generated from these resources rarely trickles down to the average person, leaving the majority in abject poverty. It's almost as if decades of corruption and exploitation have had a negative impact on economic development. The systemic corruption has siphoned off the wealth, leaving the country in a perpetual state of economic despair. Who could have foreseen that? The irony is palpable, and the frustration among the people is evident. Well, probably the Central African people, to be honest. They have long been aware of the issues plaguing their country and have often voiced their concerns, albeit to little avail. This chronic instability makes it a hotbed for armed groups vying for control, each faction seeking to exploit the country's resources for their own gain, often resorting to violence against civilians. The civilian population bears the brunt of these power struggles, facing violence and intimidation on a daily basis. It's a truly heartbreaking cycle of displacement, with families being forced to flee their homes repeatedly due to the ongoing conflict, poverty, and fear. The constant threat of violence and the lack of economic opportunities create an environment of perpetual fear and uncertainty. Imagine trying to raise a family, hold down a job, or even just, exist in a place where violence can erupt at any moment. It's just horrific. The daily life of an average citizen is fraught with challenges that many of us can't even begin to comprehend, or even just, exist in a place where violence can erupt at any moment. It's just horrific. The constant sound of gunfire and explosions is a grim reminder of the instability that plagues the nation. And if you think international intervention is the answer, well, buckle up, because that's a whole other can of worms. The international community has made numerous attempts to stabilize the region, but with mixed results, because that's a whole other can of worms. The presence of foreign military forces and international aid workers has often been a double-edged sword. Let's just say that the track record of foreign powers in the Central African Republic is mixed, at best. While some interventions have brought temporary relief, others have exacerbated the situation. More often, it's about as effective as a band-aid on a bullet wound. The underlying issues remain unaddressed, and the cycle of violence and poverty continues unabated. Libya. Land of ancient ruins, vast deserts, and, relentless turmoil. This North African nation, with its rich history and stunning landscapes, has seen more than its fair share of conflict and strife. You see, after decades under Muammar Gaddafi's, let's call it unconventional rule, things took a bit of a turn in 2011. Gaddafi's regime, marked by its eccentricity and brutality, finally crumbled under the weight of a popular uprising. And by a bit of a turn, I mean the entire country went through a full-blown revolution. The streets were filled with protests, and the air was thick with the cries for freedom and change. Now, revolutions, as exciting as they may sound in theory, often come with a heavy price. The initial euphoria of overthrowing a dictator quickly gives way to the harsh realities of rebuilding a nation. Rarely do they end with everyone sitting down for a nice cup of tea and a civilized chat about democracy. Instead, the aftermath is usually marked by chaos and uncertainty, and Libya was no exception. The fall of Gaddafi left a power vacuum that no single group was able to fill. The power vacuum left in Gaddafi's wake was basically an open invitation for various factions, militias, and frankly, anyone with a gun and an opinion to start vying for control. The struggle for dominance led to widespread violence and instability. This led to a chaotic civil war that has raged on for years, tearing the country apart and leaving countless lives in ruins. The conflict has essentially turned the country into a patchwork of competing territories, each with their own agendas and allegiances. The once unified nation is now fragmented and divided. Each faction controls different areas, creating a complex and ever-shifting landscape of power. The situation on the ground is fluid and unpredictable. Imagine trying to draw the borders of this country on a map. You'd need one of those constantly updating online maps, and even then, you'd probably still get it wrong. The borders are in a constant state of flux. You'd need one of those constantly updating online maps, and even then, you'd probably still get it wrong. The borders are in a constant state of flux, making it nearly impossible to keep track of who controls what. And as if that wasn't enough, Libya has also become a hub for human trafficking. The instability has made it a prime location for smugglers and traffickers to operate with impunity. Libya has also become a hub for human trafficking and a transit point for migrants trying to reach Europe. Thousands of desperate people pass through Libya, hoping for a better life across the Mediterranean, and a transit point for migrants trying to reach Europe. The journey is perilous and many do not make it. Those who do often find themselves in overcrowded and under-resourced camps. It's a deeply complex and tragic situation, fueled by desperation, instability, and frankly, a healthy dose of international meddling. The people of Libya continue to suffer as the world watches, often helplessly, fueled by desperation, instability, and frankly, a healthy dose of international meddling. Foreign powers have their own interest in Libya, further complicating the path to peace and stability. Well, there you have it, folks. The top 10 most dangerous countries in the world. It's a sobering reminder of the challenges many people face on a daily basis. And while it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these problems, remember that even small acts of awareness and compassion can make a difference. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Stay safe and see you in the next video.